protect the places we love, we must vote. America is a nation of many nations, many histories, many experiences. But despite our different paths, we all converged here. You see, our common ground is the land itself, our playgrounds, and places we love. Now we must protect them from the effects of climate change. If you love the land, make a plan to vote this November. Start your plan at makeadamplan.org.
Hello, everybody. I'm Graham Zimmerman. I'm the lead of the Protect Our Winners Climb program and a longtime Alliance member with Protect Our Winners. I'm a professional climbing athlete, and I'm here in Bend, Oregon. And I am here with Justin Lee, who is the Director of Elections from the state of Utah. And we're going to talk about mail-in voting. Justin, how about I have you introduce yourself and tell us what being the Director of Elections means?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Good to talk with you today, Graham. Justin Lee, Director of Elections here in the Lieutenant Governor's office in Utah. I've been the Director of Elections for 3 years now. Been with the office for about 10 years. And really anything election related in Utah kind of runs across my desk. I help coordinate with the counties, with the federal government, make sure the elections run smoothly.
That's awesome. And hey, thank you so much for being here today with us. I personally feel, and I think a lot of us feel, that the discussion around mail-in ballots is really important for a lot of reasons. And I think in particular with everything that's going on with the pandemic, is a really, seems like a really potentially responsible way for us to be engaging with voting. But I want to start out by talking a little bit about the outdoors. What do you like to do outside? What do you get outside to go do and play?
Sure. Yeah, great question. A lot more hiking and snowshoeing now. When I was younger, I used to do a lot more trail running and mountain biking. And my wife told me I needed to quit being injured as much. So it's not maybe as exciting outdoors as it used to be, but still get out there a lot.
Well, that's awesome. And being responsible in the outdoors, there's nothing wrong with that. And as somebody who is, deeply involved with a very important time right now, I don't think any of us mind that you are taking it safe so that you can make sure that our elections go smoothly. So in terms of talking about mail-in voting, I'm in Bend, Oregon, and in Oregon, we've been voting by mail since I think 1996, and it's gone really well. I actually talked to one of my in-laws and kind of about that transition back in 96, and there was a lot of really great education around it so that everybody was prepared. And it has unequivocally been positive, both for people being able to vote and for voter turnout. And I think that you're in a similar transition in Utah. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we started transitioning to vote by mail back in 2012. There was a law that was passed that said any county could run their election by mail if they wanted to. So we had one really small county, Duchesne County out in eastern Utah, went vote by mail in 2012. And it was kind of, cute, kind of interesting, little county doing it. And then we've just seen it grown since then. So in 2014, we had 10 counties that went on board. 2016, we had 21 counties that were on board. And we're going to get to 29 counties, spoiler alert. That's how many we have in Utah. But then 2018, we picked up, 27 counties, so we were almost all by mail. And then finally, this last March for the presidential primary, we were all by mail at this point.
That's awesome. So you guys are hypothetically quite prepared for all of the disasters of 2020 and the pandemic and everything. Good job.
Yeah, that was really fortunate for us. We did our presidential primary on Super Tuesday, so back in early March, just when talk of the pandemic was starting. And so I was getting calls from reporters saying, "What are you guys going to do for your election? How are you going to get ready for the pandemic?" And I said, "Well, luckily my election's over. Right now we don't have another one till June, and we're already vote by mail. So we didn't have to build a lot of infrastructure or do a lot of new training. We just kind of keep doing what we've been doing the last couple of years."
Well, excellent work. And I think that a great place to start in terms of, right now there's a lot of rhetoric around mail-in voting, maybe a lot of fear mongering around it. And so, looking at Oregon and who's been mail-in voting for a number of decades now, and looking at Utah, that's now just transitioning into it. Are you seeing any problems with mail-in voting, or has it gone pretty smoothly?
For the most part, it's gone fairly smoothly. There are some speed bumps, that we've learned along the way, and that's been really interesting as we've kind of transitioned from county to county to county. You can learn from what the previous counties have done. So messaging is one of the big things with vote by mail. Some of the early counties that went vote by mail were, I guess, very diplomatic. They said, we're vote by mail, but if you still want to come vote in person, that's great. Didn't really want to shove it down people's throats. And so what we'd see is long lines on election day, because some people still want to vote the way they've always voted. And so the messaging has gotten better over the year, where we tell people we're voting by mail, only really come in person but don't come just because that's the way you like it. And particularly during the pandemic, that's really helped to keep the line shorter and still have increased our turnout.
That's fantastic. And it feels to me like you're talking about going county by county, and that being a really good way to kind of work out the kinks and to make sure that folks are educated. And it feels to me like as we look at, kind of a more of a federal move towards, or a nationwide move towards mail-in voting, that we can utilize learnings from states like Oregon and Utah to really help roll this out effectively across the nation. Does that feel true to you?
Yeah, that's absolutely accurate. And there's been a lot of discussions with, there's an association, the National Association of State Election Directors, and we're all talking. We've been talking all year long, sharing resources, sharing what we've learned. And I want to say particularly Oregon and Washington, the other state who I think has been doing this the longest, have just been phenomenal resources to other states. They were a great resource to us when we were transitioning. And so no one really needs to feel like they're doing this alone or has to reinvent the wheel. Other states have done it, other jurisdictions have done this, and can help smooth out kinks. That's
awesome. And I think that, one of our goals here today is, there's all this airtime being filled up by, people being worried that like dogs will end up voting and things like that. I actually had my dog here a moment ago. She ran off, but I was gonna make a joke about Pebble would love to vote, but she will not be able to. She has been running a Get Out the Vote campaign on her Instagram, which has been kind of funny. But I think that instead of that rhetoric, creating kind of fear around how vote-in mail or mail-in voting can go, we need to be leaning harder into answering people's questions about mail-in voting and educating people on how it works, and really building voter confidence in the fact that this is a system that works well. This is a system that's proven. And this is a system that doesn't only work well during a pandemic, but also is a great way to get out voting in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. I think when we're really focusing on, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Some of the rhetoric, I like the word you used, fear mongering. It's not helpful. Educating people about how the process works is really helpful, and so something like this is a great event for that. But yeah, as we've done this over the years, there's really not any problems that are not surmountable. There's some things you have to get used to. There's some differences, but voters get used to it. Voters figure it out, and there's no question turnout goes up. The literature out there shows that it can go up a couple of percentage points, and we've seen that. But in not just general elections, not just a November election, but a municipal election where turnout is just notoriously low. We've doubled turnout in some cases in some of our municipalities, because the best way to tell if someone an election is going on is put a ballot in front of them. You may not know that your city council is up for election this year. It's not going to get as much coverage. But if you get a ballot in the mail, you're suddenly very aware of it. And so we see turnout go way up for something like that.
That sounds really exciting. And if you don't mind, I've just kind of got a list of questions here that some are mine, some have been have been pulled from the Protect Our Winners community and others from the staff. Do you mind if I just kind of start barraging you with questions on mail-in voting and some of it's just to kind of get folks educated?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. Okay, so what is mail-in voting? And how long has it been around? Even though we've kind of covered that. And what is the difference between vote by mail and absentee voting?
So yeah, let's maybe start with that one. What's the difference between vote by mail and absentee voting? I think the simplest distinction between the two is if a jurisdiction or a state or a county, whatever it is vote by mail, they're just automatically going to send every voter a ballot. Voter doesn't have to request it. And that's really the key to an absentee ballot. Is an absentee ballot is for someone who requests the ballot. To make one more, really wonky distinction, some states have what's called no-fault absentee, where anybody can request an absentee ballot. You don't actually have to be absent to request that. While some other states do have a requirement that you have to have a reason to vote absentee. You actually have to be, out of town or something like that. And one of the transitions we're really seeing this fall is more states are kind of going to that no-fault absentee if they did require it before. During a pandemic, that seems like a pretty solid reason that anybody can request that absentee ballot. So you'll see that in the news a lot, and sometimes the terms are really interchangeable. It doesn't really matter, but vote by mail, everyone gets a ballot. Absentee, you have to request it.
Okay, and something I'll plug really quick is that with Protect Our Winners, we're running a Make a Plan to Vote tool, and through that you can plug in your zip code, and it'll tell you whether you need to apply for an absentee ballot or if you're just going to get the vote by mail ballot. And if you do need to apply for an absentee ballot, it'll take you through the steps to help you make that happen. So it's a really easy tool to kind of answer all of those questions for you specifically in your state and your district and with your situation. Now, I think that something that people are concerned about right now is how these lists are updated to remove people that have died or moved or been deemed ineligible.
Yeah, that's a great question, and we do get that question quite a bit. I think you mentioned a couple of them right there. If someone passes away, we don't want to send them a ballot, and so I know we do the same thing as all states really. Is we work with our vital records department, Social Security Administration. So if someone does pass away, we can remove them from the rolls. Because with a vote by mail ballot, it's really important that our rolls are clean. We don't want to be sending ballots to people that don't live there. And so that's an effort we've undertaken as a state over the last many years, is cleaning up those rolls. So if we send a piece of mail to you and it comes back to us undeliverable, we can then reach out and say, hey, are you still there? Do you still live there? And if not, we can remove you from the rolls. Or if we don't hear anything, we put you on what's called the inactive list. It doesn't mean you're not registered to vote anymore if you're on that inactive list. It just means we think you might not live there. And then in a few more cycles, if we don't hear anything back at that point, you may be removed.
Okay, that's very informative when it comes to how you avoid sending ballots to people who aren't there or who shouldn't get a ballot. And with a tool like POW's put together with the Make a Plan to Vote tool, is that a good way for us to make sure that we get our ballot, to make sure that we have our address correct and that we're registered correctly and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Tools like that are awesome. Every state's going to have a way to look up your voter registration information as well. In Utah, you can go to it's vote.utah.gov, put in your info, see if you're registered, see if it's the right address, and if not, get that updated. And that's all of our goals, to make sure that we get the ballots to the right people at the right addresses.
Cool. And then something that I've run into, but I've also talked to others about, is they make sure in Oregon that they match your signature. And I just have kind of a scribble of a signature, like many of us. And they decided that, and this is in the primary, that my signature didn't match. And I got a letter in the mail that said, hey, doesn't look like your signature matches. Can you confirm this is you? And can you kind of take us through that part of the kind of like security process around voting?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really important part of the security process, because you're not coming to the polls, you're not showing your driver's license or anything. So the signature is our best way to check that it is you and that the right person is voting the ballot. So what happens is, if your signature doesn't match, most states that are doing this, at least Utah, Oregon, Colorado, I know this is the norm. It's called the cure process. We send you some kind of a notification, whether it's email, text, phone call, letter. There's different options, and verify that it really is you. Because we do understand, people's signatures change. You may do a really nice signature one day, and then kind of your grocery store dirty signature that is barely a signature. You break your arm or whatever it may be. Some people have degenerative diseases and their signature changes. So we want to make sure we're not discounting ballots. So that process is in place in a lot of places to reach out, confirm that it is you, and then if necessary, we can update your signature so in the future that doesn't happen.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that other reasons, I guess, what are other reasons that a ballot might be flagged, such as like damage and things like that? And are those dealt with in the same way?
Yeah, a similar thing. If it comes back, if Pebbles got to hold your ballot before you got it in the mailbox and it got chewed up, then we can reach out and verify that or have that fixed. But that's really the goal, is balancing the security to make sure that we're counting what should be counted, but also not discounting anything that shouldn't be discounted.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense. In terms of that kind of the security questions, are there any other questions that you get often that you feel like are worth addressing right now?
Yeah, people ask us about fraud a lot. Is there a lot of fraud with vote by mail? I think everyone's probably heard that question this year. And there's really nothing that we've seen that shows any kind of widespread fraud or way people are really gaming the system. Do we have people that sign for other people? Does a parent sign for a child? Does a spouse or a partner sign for one another? Yeah, that does happen from time to time. And we know because we catch it. People think they're really, really good at forging signatures, and our people are pretty good at catching that stuff at this point. They've got a lot of experience with it. But we're not seeing any.
Oh, we're a little frozen. Okay, perfect. You froze for just a moment, so I'll get you to just share that the last part of that statement you just made about you guys being really good at catching fraud.
Oh yeah, no. So it's cold here. It's the wind this week.
Don't worry. The whole there's snow in Colorado and smoke in the west. Things are strange.
Who knows what's going on this week? It's September. But yeah, there's nothing that really shows any kind of widespread fraud. Any people that are really successfully gaming that system in these buy mail states.
Cool. That's really exciting for me to hear. And it sounds to me like the systems that you have in place in Utah and that we have in place here in Oregon are really well set up to catch that fraud. If somebody were trying to be nefarious with their voting or others voting. And one kind of question that I have for you is if we look at a state that is implementing either more absentee voting or is implementing vote by mail due to pandemic and that being a little more last minute, it strikes me that matching signatures and that kind of technology and that kind of methodology is something that is present for a whole slew of other reasons in a lot of states. So that shouldn't be too challenging for folks to implement. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that is fair. There's, depending how much vote by mail a state has had in the past is going to impact their ability to kind of scale it up this year. Prior to a lot of our counties going to vote by mail here, we already had 25 to 30% of voters voting by mail. So it wasn't a question of learning a new system. It was a question of just kind of scaling that up to the whole populace. Okay,
that makes a lot of sense. Now, one of the big questions this year, as we talk about the post office, the USPS, as we talk about the time that it takes to count mail-in ballots, can you just kind of give us sort of in your mind's eye what it'll look like in November when we are collecting these mail-in ballots and when we're looking at the election results on November 3rd versus a few days after that?
Yeah, so that's going to be really interesting. One of the things that every vote by mail state has had to get used to is it does take a little bit longer to get results. Because you're getting ballots in on election day. We still have to verify all those signatures. We have to process those. So you're not going to get all of your results on election night. Now, election officials will always point out that nothing on election night is official anyway. Although the media likes to call races, we're certifying races, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later. and nobody cares because they already called it in the news. But it does take a few more days to get results. So that's some messaging that has to go out from our offices, is just to let people know it's going to take a little bit of time, but we're still going to get a law on election day. The other distinction to make is different states have different deadlines for when ballots are returned. Some states have those ballots returned on election day or they won't be counted. States like Utah, we require that it be postmarked no later than the day before election day, but it can be received for the next 2 weeks after that. So we have a much larger window to receive those ballots, make sure everything counts, and that something outside of the voter's control, like how long the USPS takes to deliver something, doesn't make their vote count or not count. So we're gonna have to be a little patient with the results. It's something all vote by mail states have gotten used to. Nationally, we're just gonna have to get used to that a little bit more too.
Okay, that's really I really like that. Now, are there ways that we can make sure that our ballot is there sooner, like dropping it off at ballot boxes and things like that?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, ballot boxes are great. Most counties, most states have something, and they, depending where you're at, they look like a post box, a mailbox, but they'll be silver or some other color, and they say ballot drop. But yeah, you drop that off, and it goes directly to your county election officials to get processed. You take out the middleman of the post office, or you can take them to polling places in most places on election day, and that just serves as a vote center where you can go drop that off as well. So if you have any concerns about getting your ballot in, taking it directly to the election officials through the drop box or the polling location is a great way to do that.
Okay, that's great. I think that's probably what I'm going to do. Well, I guess that's what I do every year, actually. And in terms of kind of being able to track our ballot, make sure that it was received and that kind of thing. Are there any kind of feedback mechanisms where I can, if I'm somebody who like lives way out in far away from a municipal center and way out in rural Oregon or something, and I do want to drop mine in the mail because I don't want to drive 2 hours into Bend to drop it off at the ballot box. Are there any ways for me to kind of check and make sure that it's been received and that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Most states and jurisdictions are going to have a way to track your ballot. There's different levels of sophistication. Some of them, really track it through the whole mail system. Other ones, it'll tell you when it gets to the county clerk and when it's been processed. But every state's going to have something. So in Utah, go to vote.utah.gov and you can put in your information and see that your ballot's been sent to you, see that the county clerk's received it, see that it's been counted. Or it'll even pop up and tell you if there's some issue with it that you need to fix it if you haven't heard from the county clerk yet.
Okay, that's like if you messed up your signature or something like that.
Exactly. Yeah, they'll tell you there's some kind of issue that needs to be fixed. But the tracking is really important, and you're going to see even more of that springing up in states that are kind of expanding their vote by mail, because it's vital for the voters to have some way to track that and check it.
That's really exciting, and also, I mean, to me personally, not really that surprising since we already have so much technology for effectively tracking where our UPS packages or FedEx packages are. I mean, my phone seems to be constantly blowing up with like your package is 10 minutes closer than it was 10 minutes ago.
Right.
So yeah, knowing that we're applying that same technology towards our mail is great. And then something that's come up on the questions from the audience here is the concerns about the USPS and mail dumps in parking lots and things like that. And while this tracking technology is available and you can keep track of what's going on, it does seem like if you can get to the ballot box, which in the case of here in Bend, it's like you drive up in your car and just kind of pitch it into the box that's over by the I think it's by the courthouse. But it seems like that's a really, if you can do that, that's a really good way to just make sure that you cut out any kind of middlemen in the process.
Yeah, I think, one of the things with vote by mail that's great is you get your ballot, a couple of weeks early, a few weeks early, depending on where it's at. And I'm not telling anyone they have to vote early, but the earlier you vote, the better chance you have of fixing an issue if something comes up. If you wait till election day, that's obviously harder. But there's time to fix that kind of thing, time to work it through if something gets lost. But that really just doesn't happen a whole lot. And as we work with our local post office officials, they've been very good about working directly with our county clerks. For example, in a lot of our rural areas, because if you're in southern Utah, your mail may get sent to Colorado to get postmarked before it comes back to Utah, which seems, circuitous, but that's what happens. But a lot of the local post office officials will take those ballots and just get them directly to the county clerks. They'll stamp them as received or something like that without going through the whole process. And so those relationships that the local officials have help. And as we work with, particularly with our local post office officials, that's what a lot of the people in other states are doing as well. Just working with those, working through issues, and making sure that the election ballot should be treated, basically sacred. And they do a pretty good job with that.
That's really exciting. And okay, so this kind of relates to everything else we've been talking about. I know we're kind of beating a dead horse here with asking tons of questions about very similar things. But if you have one of these signature issues, or you have an issue with your ballot, and say you mail in your ballot in Utah on November 1st, how long do you have to deal with fixing your signature, or if it's damaged or whatever happens? Like, what's kind of the time frame you have to work with there?
So that's a great question. Basically, you have here in Utah, you have up until the point that we certify the election, which is going to be 7 to 14 days after election day. So the bare minimum, you're going to have 4, 5, 6 days to fix that, depending when the ballot's received, and you could have as much as 2 weeks to fix any issues that come up.
Okay.
So there's time.
Great. But would you say that keeping track of your mail, checking your PO box during that time, just in case something like that comes back in, it's probably a good time to be kind of on top of your communications, if you will?
Yeah. Check your mail. I mean, if you mailed in your ballot, definitely check your mail to see if there's any issues. And again, go online and track that stuff. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to election officials, and we can look it up and make sure that that your ballot's been counted, and that any concerns you have, get alleviated, because we don't want anybody questioning whether or not their ballot's been counted.
Totally. Well, that's great. Well, I have one last question for you. I guess maybe it's kind of a twofer, but it's a little off our script here. I kind of tried to prepare you with some of the questions that I was going to ask before, but do you think that voting is important in the United States, and why?
Man, that's a tough one. Yeah, absolutely. Voting.
Justin, we lost you there. I'm going to have to get you to repeat your answer. Yeah, no worries. You cut out right at the beginning of your answer, though, so I'll get you to start over.
It's such a good answer, too. I don't know if I can recreate it, but yeah, I mean, I have the cool job. I facilitate democracy, which is the basis for all of our governance and peaceful transfers of power. So it's so important. That's how the biggest way that we lend our voice to the process. So voting's super important. Everybody should do it, and I'm always happy that I get to be a part of that.
Excellent. And do you believe that mail-in voting is a good solution for how we vote?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been doing elections for 10 years now. If you roll back 10 years ago, no one was really voting by mail in Utah. So I've seen the whole process to everyone voting by mail in Utah, and it's been great. More people are participating. It gives people more time to vote. I really love everything about it.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. This has been really informative, and not only for me, but I think for a lot of our community. And once again, I'll encourage folks to go and check out the Protect Our Winners Make a Plan to Vote tool. You can get at it by just going to protectourwinners.org. There's a little widget that will pop up in the corner, and that'll give you a lot of the tools to kind of help you navigate the mail-in voting process, since it is different state by state. But I hope you come away from this conversation feeling confident about mail-in voting and absentee voting, and feeling like, despite all of the things going on in 2020, that we can still have a good, fair election, and maybe even get a better turnout, because we're going to be doing a lot of voting from home. So Justin, thank you so much. And I'm gonna count to 3, and we're gonna turn off our videos, and then we'll pull into a quick video that Pal's gonna play for you. Yeah, does that sound all right? Or is there anything else you want to share before we jump off?
No, that sounds awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, thanks for being here, man. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1.
The outdoor community is over 50 million people, and that's almost 40% of the number of voters in the 2016 elections. And the outdoor community and young people are historically bad at turning out. Even if you feel like it doesn't matter, just please, please, please vote.